This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified professional. For support, please reach out to the South African Depression and Anxiety Group or the South African Federation for Mental Health. Your well-being is important, and help is available.
Welcome to it. My name is Kgaugelo Habyane, and we are back with the second segment. Do we call it the second segment, or do you call it season 2 of Mind Matters? This is a series brought to you by John Craig, who've been styling men for the past 75 years. That's quite an achievement, right? But today we are talking about men's mental health when it comes to the workplace. As you might remember, last time we spoke about men's mental health in general, right? We touched on quite a few topics with my brother Leon here, with the legendary Lucas Radebe. And you see today we've got another legend in the building. We'll give a formal introduction in a few minutes. But just to remind that when we talk about mental health, we're obviously talking about the social, the emotional, and the psychological wellness that we strive for, we should be striving for, right? And why is mental health important is because it influences how we think, how we feel, and how we perform in the workplace. So it's very important that we speak to the issues that also impact our performance, because as men, we believe that work is something that is, or at least we should believe that work is something important. And as we're looking at today's landscape, looking at the economic challenges that we are facing in the country, the informal economy as well, making it very hard for men to, grapple with this idea of providing, right? So before we get into all of that, let me introduce my fellow gentlemen over here. I'll start with the man who's making his debut on our panel. David Tshabalala is also known as Slaying Goliath, man. I love that, man. So you're taking down beasts here. David is a South African illustrator. He's a graphic designer and a content creator renowned for vibrant, socially conscious digital art. I don't want to read everything here, brother, but man, welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And David, just to break the ice a little bit, man, you're working a lot with creative stuff. So what's your go-to sort of mental health sort of hack for when things are getting a bit overwhelming for you?
I think for me, switching off helps a lot. Switching off the work, switching off the amount of research I have to do, the contact with clients. I cycle, I have hobbies.
Nice.
I love playing games as well. Because in my line of work, I deal with a lot of personalities,
Sure.
deal with a lot of ego, a lot of clients who are demanding. So I think sometimes it can take a strain on my mental health. So it's nice to almost switch off and just, play games with my son and just get up out.
Yes, sir. That's one of the challenges, man, switching off, especially in this creative space, right? Because work is always on. Just like you, bro, Lucas. Right now, we're talking about Leeds coming back to the Premier League. So I'm pretty sure you are not getting any sleep for the next couple of years, hopefully, if you stay in the top flight, right? Yeah. But what are some of your hacks, bro, Lucas?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's, I'm in a space where I deal with people, and I love that interaction.
Sure.
And for the fact that I'm always distant, especially in the field of play. But when you come into contact or interaction with them, it's great to hear the views.
Nice.
The opinion sometimes could be nice, but yeah, mostly, I'm a family man. I like, sticking with family, immediate family, and siblings and stuff. And
nice.
As you know, and KG, I have a big family, so I reach out to them. That's my support.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's where I get my energy from.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
exactly. It speaks to connection, because we need connection. And mental health, or one of the key parts of mental health, is feeling connected to some kind of community, right? Leon, coming back to you in the NPO space and doing a lot of work in community where you see very heavy stuff, man. So I'm pretty sure that you need times to disconnect and just feed yourself a little. So what do you do?
I think what David said is absolutely essential. I think it's about maintaining that work-life balance. I think the danger is when you don't do that and you can't draw that line. And I've always been very strict with myself to say my day ends at a specific time.
Yes.
And I have a very strict wife that keeps me to it. She'll say, work day is finished now. And so I think it's about creating that structure. And you're right, working in the NPO space, working with mental health, it's heavy subject matter every day.
Yes.
And you have to have that break. Otherwise, it can consume you.
That's right.
So I think maintaining a really good work-life balance. I'm also a family man, like Lucas was saying, spending time with the family is absolutely essential. And just doing whatever to get my mind away from work.
Yes,
I think it's when your mind stays in the workplace, even though you're not physically there, that you start running the risk of burning yourself out.
Man. And you brought up a very important one there. I think that burnout is one of the things that I could argue that our economy predisposes us to burnout, right? Thinking about your industry, David, for someone who is in a creative space, who's especially starting out, you know that you have to take on more than just one job. Or you probably have your 9 to 5, but then the other side hustles that you also want to get into. So that also comes with its own challenges, right? But then can you also speak to us, Leon, around maybe some of the risk factors that you've kind of discovered that are being spoken about around the mental health profession?
Within the workplace? I think generally speaking in the workplace, there are a few things that are kind of prolific regardless of which sector you work in. And I think one of the biggest challenges is if you have a situation where work pressures and work demands are not effectively balanced with a person's knowledge and abilities. And you have that disconnect. That's when a lot of the mental health problems start. And then you have practical things like, people's job descriptions aren't clear, management, and we can talk, I think organizational culture, management styles play an immense role in shaping the mental health narrative and climate within an organization. And but I think one of the other really important things is also ensuring that people have a sense of participation and control over what they do. Something that really disempowers employees is when they are just told what to do without having any say in what they do. And it's been seen that when people have a sense of ownership, not only do they perform better, but they feel better because they have a sense of, I can kind of give input into what I'm doing. It's not just a top-down kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, the list goes on, making sure that there's sufficient mental health support structures. But the one thing that's really important, and I hope we can touch about it a bit more as we go along, is the importance of creating a culture within an organization which allows for mental health to be spoken about. That is absolutely essential.
I mean, that's important. And I mean, that the whole culture of speaking out at work really depends on, am I feeling safe in this place, number one, right? So if I'm not feeling safe enough to even say to Leon or to my manager or to a supervisor that, hey, listen, there's trouble at home or there's this and that I'm dealing with, then that door is not open. So absolutely. I could be carrying a lot of stuff that I could not necessarily speak about. So I mean, David, in your experience now, speaking to that creative space where sometimes there is no manager for me to speak to, right? Because I'm the one driving this ship. Or maybe my manager's there, but they don't know about all of these other jobs that I have now. So I don't know if you've experienced some of these in your line of work, and how have you navigated some of those challenges?
My line of work can be very lonely in a sense that I don't always have, in a traditional sense, colleagues. It's just a lot of collaborators and partners at different points in time. So my work does get very lonely. I don't necessarily have anyone to reach out to. So like I said, I think I use my downtime as mental health being of sorts. Like I use that downtime.
Mm.
So I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's sustainable. But I don't really have anyone to lean on besides my agent, who I almost just vent out to.
Wow.
But I'm guessing that's a therapy in itself. I think just speaking out, just letting it out. Because my journey is very I'm a lone ranger. I don't have a traditional team in the sense of the word.
Sure.
But my past experiences when I was more junior as a designer, I'm privileged enough to have had platforms and environments where there was a caring HR manager and a caring manager. My ex-boss is like a mentor as well. So I talk to a lot as well on certain issues. So I guess it's not always about finding a professional therapist or mental health sort of specialist, but it's having that someone to talk to. To guide you through.
Yes, sir. No, I love that. And I love that you brought up the Lone Ranger. And a lot of times when you speak about a Lone Ranger in our fields of work, it seems like this person is not keen on collaborating. But then you also come back to say that, no, you have a mentor and someone that you reach to, someone that you speak to, that connection piece that Lucas spoke about. And in the soccer field, man, we almost, I look at Martin Odegaard, and I'm sorry to bring up Arsenal, I'm a little bit biased here. But I see Martin Odegaard and the conversation around him, right? Exceptional player, did very well the previous season, but then he gets injured. He had a child, I think sometime in December, and that had a huge impact on his performance. But we look at him and we say, he must get it right. He must get it together. But we don't think about those underlying issues that he's also dealing with. So do you think that conversation between teammates happens, or even us, the fans? Do you think about, man is probably carrying that knee injury now. It's been 5 seasons, guys. Can we let him go? He's getting a bit old. There are other issues that are at play.
Yeah.
So how did you navigate that?
Yeah, it's very difficult in a way that, especially if you're foreigner in another country, where you expect it, to be the best in what you do, and the pressures as well that come with it, that you gotta be on top of your game every weekend. It's training, it's game time. That consistency,
sure.
On and off the field of play, but the influence. You talk about Odegaard. It's very difficult to not being able to perform to your best because of the influence or the distractions at home. Because you must realize that most of us at work, family comes first for us as sports people.
Yes, sir.
If nothing is right in the family, then you can't perform properly. And the fans they don't know exactly what's happening when you walk into that field. You run onto that field, and what they know is that you're going to give it the best. And, and you yourself, knowing yourself how the best you can, you can give or you can contribute to the team. And not being able to do that because of the problem that we have, at home. The kid is not well. My wife is sick. I had the problem. I had the similar problem. Not even similar, maybe a bit worse, because my wife was diagnosed with cancer when I was still playing. But I still had to focus. I still had to go and train every day and give 100%, which it's challenging because you can't share. With the fans, you can't say to the fans, "I'm sorry because I can't give 100%. I can't perform because I've got this." No, there's no excuses. So you're gonna have to go out there. You got to prepare your mind. You have to prepare for the game as much as you can. To be able to perform. So those are some of these problems, and as well, you're going through a lot. Because people think, fans will think, is any other one. We're paying.
Sure.
Why this happens? Why is he carrying an injury? I don't care. But who do you talk to? about these issues. Because at the end of the day, you have to go home. You go home, there's that kind of problem that you're going to be facing. But apart from that, where do you go to say, you reach out to your teammate, you reach out to your manager and say, you apologize. You are there to do a job. And that's what you're expected to do. So it's difficult sometimes when you want to share with someone, you want to vent out, as you were saying, David, that, you need to pick someone that you can trust as well. Somebody that it'll give you an honest, your honest, not, it has to be an honest conversation without being biased. And, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And give you a good advice that you can believe in and say, I can actually move on and do that, which I think it's very, very crucial.
Man. And you said very important things there. And I think that pressure to perform, right, also creates a bit of a stigma for us, right? Because then if I'm a man who's expected to provide and I cannot perform well, which then leads to how I'm providing, there's a lot of issues that I sit with. And again, having that safe person, then sometimes it's, I know Lou is safe, but hey, man, that means me as a man, I'm lesser, right? Then that also has a stigma of its own. So can you speak to how a little bit of the stigma impacts on how we maybe fail each other in an employee-manager sort of relationship type of thing?
Yeah, man, I think there are, you guys said a lot of really important things. I think, first of all, let's start about safe environments. I think if we were looking at so I'm talking from the perspective of a kind of traditional organizational environment where you have, management structures and you have employees, etc. And I think it's about creating a safe environment where men who traditionally, because of things like, we have to be the breadwinners, there's no room for crying, otherwise you're a sissy, you have to man up. So men have bad help-seeking behavior. Men don't like to show vulnerability. And especially in the workplace, you want to be tough, you want to be seen, that you're able to cope, that you can cope.
And I'm not going to get promoted, right?
But that's where I always encourage managers to practice what I sort of broadly refer to as vulnerable management. So if I, as a manager, show my staff, or I talk to them about, say I'm having some mental health problems and I talk to my staff about that, they'll go, okay, this is creating a safe space. My manager is talking about these things. It's okay for me to talk to him about it. So I think, and especially for men, for a man in the workplace to reach out to a superior or a colleague, there needs to be the sense that, like Lucas was saying, I'm not going to be judged. Somebody that I trust to give me, to hear me out. Even if he can't give me advice, just talking, like you were also saying that, even if it's venting, and you made a very good point, David, is that it's not, you don't necessarily need to see a therapist or a psychiatrist, but it's just about verbalizing and having that connection. And actually, when you look at the workplace, what people don't realize is that people tend to think, okay, we're talking about mental health in the workplace, and we automatically equate it to stress and bad mental health. But actually, the workplace, if it functions well, can actually fortify mental health. It can be good for somebody's mental health, because what does a workplace do for people? And I'm not talking the post-COVID place where a lot of us are working remotely. I'm talking about a traditional organization. But even if you are working remotely, working gives you social connection. It reduces isolation. It gives you structure. And, we all talk about, we always say, kids need structure to grow. Adults are the same. We function best when there's some semblance of structure around our day. It gives us, like I said, social contact. It gives us a sense of purpose. If your job gives you a sense of purpose, that's good for your mental well-being. So it's about again, I want to go back to organizational culture, because these things do unfortunately come from the top down. If you have a management style that is bureaucratic and dismissive towards vulnerability, and it's just like work, there's no time for discussing feelings, mental health is going to suffer. And men especially are not going to come out and say, look, I'm really struggling. But if you have an open environment, and I'll use myself as a case, I have an excellent relationship with our director. Her and I have worked together for 13 years now. And when I went through a divorce 10 years ago, you know, I mean, it was tough. My mental health was flat. I was really struggling. But I felt safe to walk into her office, close the door and say to her, look, I need to talk to you.
Sure.
This is where I'm at. My mental health is taking a hammering. And she was able to support me through that. But if I had had a boss that I didn't feel comfortable talking to, no ways I would have sucked it up, and my mental health would have just plummeted, and I would have gotten worse.
Man.
And I'd go so far, I'll finish with saying this. I'll go so far as to say that, you know, because we have terrible help-seeking behavior, we don't get the support we need. And therefore, if you look at suicide rates around the world, 75% of suicides are men. So because we don't get the support we need, we don't reach out. And in the workplace, having that avenue to go to, having somebody that's empathetic and that's there to support you, it can mean the difference between life and death. If you look at it in an extreme case, if a man is struggling with unmanaged depression, for instance, the work pressures are getting him down, he's falling into substance abuse, his marriage is falling apart, he's at risk of thinking about suicide. And a good manager or employee, a fellow employee, but a good manager can make that difference to that person.
Oh, man. And I think that's quite powerful, Leon. I thank you for bringing in that angle of suicide, because managing that mental health is quite important. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, is to create agency around our mental health, right? Knowing that we are on a spectrum, you're not always going to be positive and fluent and high performing all the time.
Absolutely.
There are times where you're going to be sort of in the middle, right? And you kind of need to speak to someone.
Yeah.
And then when you decline again to hitting crisis mode, then you know, man, I don't need to be talking to someone. Someone already knows that I need to check on KG, because we know KG is not okay, right? So that's one of the things that we're trying to impart here with the guys, that it's okay to perform. It's okay to work 100 jobs if you want to make sure that you bring in the money. But it's more important for you to remember that if you don't take care of your health, if you don't speak to people, you don't reach out, you don't connect, you are the one who might end up being on those unfortunate statistics. So we're talking about, man, KG is gone, you know? So please take care of yourself, gents. And I just want to come back now that we went on a bit of a heavy one right there. David, I look at this. And I spoke to a police officer very recently, and he highlighted something for me that we hear a lot in conversation and passing, right? That, you know, these companies say that, yeah, you can come speak to me, we'll send you to a therapist, we'll get you coaching, whatever you need, right? He did all of that. And after doing all of that, he came out of therapy and he was okay, and kind of functional, right? And then he got fired. So this is work-related stuff. So I'm going through all the processes and saying that, okay, let me speak to someone, let me reach out, but then I still get fired. And I think in the creative line of work, we do have a lot of examples like that, you know, where guys will come up and, you know, I delivered on a project, I did everything I had to do. Unfortunately, the client was not happy and I must still go. What happens in those instances where, man, I mean, I've done everything, but still, you know, this is work-related stuff, but why am I now being left outside in the cold?
So I think that scenario sounds like there are a lot of flaws in the system, because my previous position, when I was promoted as head of design at an agency, that promotion came with having a business coach. It was called an accelerated coaching program. So when the business promotes from within, they also empower you with a coach, and they don't just talk about work; they talk about just life, work-life balance, and everything you wanna talk about. And when I had coaching with that lady, she made it clear that it's strictly confidential. So, because I tell her my goals and dreams about my career, which might not necessarily be growing in that company, but beyond.
Yes,
So I could tell her that I want to have my own company, I want to have my own agency.
Mm.
She couldn't now go to my boss and say, this guy that you're training and upskilling, he's experienced out. And I actually think it's even probably it's more of a safer space, a healthy space for everyone if they know my intentions. If my boss knows that this guy wants to go and his own thing, I feel like that's something that should be sort of encouraged, and it also helped me also express myself better and not hide around doing other things behind his back and the company's back. So I think if there's gonna be a coach or an HR practitioner in a company, there's supposed to be some level of confidentiality. I think it's almost like that patient doctor thing.
Sure.
Right? So I think the scenario you brought up, I think there was a flaw in the system there. Anything you say cannot be held against you as opposed, like
yeah,
well, to the detriment of
that's what we want ideally, right? But I mean, there are scenarios, and I'm sure maybe there are some people who are listening to this who can attest to this. Whereas, man, I actually did say that there's something wrong here, and it's a personal thing. And now, because of that personal thing, especially for people in management, whereas, man, I cannot say that. Now I have to hide my hand, because if I say that, then I'm not being put on that project. Because you're not gonna be the man to take this company forward, you know. Again, this is a scenario, but I'm pretty sure that there are men out there. So I'm not speaking for any company or trying to demonize it, but just trying to say that, you know, we should also make room for those. But I love that you bring in the angle where there are companies, for example, that do that very well. I could speak to my experience during COVID, where, you know, I had some very difficult issues sleeping during COVID, and I was working at the time, and I said to my boss that, no, I don't even know how to tell you this, but I can't sleep I didn't even say it's work related. I spoke about other issues, right? Because I don't know if I said that it's work related, then chances are I'm going to get taken off of these things.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So then making that excuse then led me to therapy or coaching, where then I could speak about all the other things that were going on. But then again, coming to an informal economy where I don't have management, which is something that we also have to speak to, because a lot of the youth are not in positions where there is a manager. But I'm the manager, I'm the financer, I'm everything. So when is the right moment for me to say that, hey, yeah, no, things are bad, man. I need to actually now start saying that, hey, maybe I need to highlight Praluda, maybe I need to highlight David to say, man, I need some mentorship, some guidance, you know. I don't know if you can speak to that, Pralu.
Yeah, I think, you know what, KJ, very important that you brought up that the mentorship thing, because I mean, listening to Leon here, listening to David here, you know, it makes a huge difference. And now I start realizing that, you know, we're all going through the same thing, but in a different environment, you know, but it's how we come together and help one another, you know, which for me is very important. Yes. David was saying that, you know, at work, you know, there must be those opportunities where there's psychologists, you know, they hire somebody who has to deal with all these stresses and that. You know, when not everywhere you can find that. I mean, I was in the township. I know a lot of people in the township because they can't afford this, they can't afford that. You can't have therapy, you can't afford to go to therapist, and it's quite touching to see. You know, because I grew up there, you know, and I see, you know, what's happening over there. And I spend most of the time, I mean, I did say even the last time, I said, I spend most of the time in the community, you know, in the township. And I see. And that affects me as well. Sure. Because you wanna help. But how do you find help if you don't have the resources? You know, in that kind of community. But it's a tough one if you want to take it upon yourself. You know, unless you create some sort of a program or environment where, you know, you're able to, you know, to have access to, you know, and I mean, you guys did say just the chat. You know, just want somebody to listen. You know, even if they're not saying anything back or don't advise you and Leon, you know, just somebody to listen and vent out a bit. You know, you come out a better person. You know, and for me, it's still hard to see that in some of the workplace, you know, they don't give that opportunity to have or somebody to come in, you know, for some therapy or psychological help. Where, I mean, there's so much pressure in this economy now that, you know, there's we need to be to reach our target. You know, and those targets are not just they're just really high. You know, and the competition, you know, it's very tough. And some people with this, okay, there are those who are absolutely great, who do well, who can cope.
Sure.
But there are those who can't cope. How do you help those who can't cope? You know, because I think for me, the most important thing, if in the field of play I can't play or I can see my game is off, I need my center back, my partner to say, hey, come on, are you okay?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Or what do you need? You need something like that. I think maybe if we can, something like that can be derived, you know, especially at work, at workplaces. I know we do. We do go out and play some games and stuff, teamwork, building and stuff. But I think more needs to be done. I mean, you spoke about the amount of suicide that's happening. It's absolutely crazy, because I had friends that committed suicide because of the pressure, because of being of being a breadwinner, being a father, being a brother. You know, it's a tough one, but we try as men. We want to man up and say, you know what, we want to show up.
That's right.
We want to provide. We want to, and which it can be detrimental as well.
Man, heavy topics, man. I mean, Leon, now I'm thinking about this now as Lucas speaking around having a team, a support system, right? I keep thinking about our managers as well. I know they carry a big responsibility, right? So them being trained on awareness and knowing your team, and knowing when to intervene, knowing when to step back to give advice and all of that. How important is it for these managers to be trained?
It is. I can't actually overstate the importance. I think what works really well is if an organization recognizes that they want to build, I guess, the mental health landscape within their organizations, there's a three-pronged approach that works really well. First of all, you do exactly what you said now. You train your managers. You train your managers on how to better read their staff, how to recognize problems, how to be more open in their communication. So to make sure that the managerial style is not perpetuating people's problems, but that they can spot problems and then act accordingly. So we need to train our managers to be more, sorry, I keep saying the same thing because it's so important, but we need to empower our managers to create organizational cultures where we destigmatize and demystify mental health and mental illness, where it's something that we can openly talk about, okay? The second part is we also need to educate our employees. We need to increase their literacy levels about mental health so that they know, okay, I'm feeling really low, I don't have energy, I'm feeling fatigued, I'm having really nasty thoughts, actually, that sounds like I might have depression. I might need support. We've got a manager who's trained. We've got an employee with a need, and there's already a pathway we've created. Right. And then the third strategy we need to put in place is to make sure that there are support structures for all employees, like employee assistance programs. We have a lot of EAP providers in South Africa. A lot of corporates subscribe to those EAP providers. And they provide confidential, like you were talking, David, about the importance of confidentiality. Yes, sir. And where they provide confidential counseling over the phone at no cost to employees, where you get speakers to come in. So when you've got support structures for your staff, and with that, I'm including all staff, managers, everybody. You've got educated employees who understand mental health, mental illness. They understand human rights. They understand mental health in the workplace. And then you've got a management team that is receptive to mental health, that knows how to effectively communicate with people about these kind of things, how to spot problems in somebody else. When you've got those three components, you're on a good track to creating what I would call a mentally healthy workplace.
And this is a bit of a funny one. So in preparation for this, I had asked a couple of guys, so guys, do you know of any programs for you to go to or to reach out to when you need some support, The guys are like, yeah, no, there are plenty of these. I'm like, okay, cool. When was the last time you used one? Like, men don't usually talk about these things. I'm like, yeah, sure. But when was the last time you used it, right? And there's always a deflection as we're talking about other men. So it's very curious to me to find, but why can't I say that I actually used a program? I'm not asking you what you did there. I'm just asking if you used it.
Yeah.
Basically asking if you've ever went to the doctor. Not what you went to go get checked up for.
Yeah.
Right? So I see that there's a bit of a denial, Man, I don't want to be seen as a person who used this because then I have a mental health issue or mental illness even, right? So, David, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit, whereas for you spoke about that like easily. How do you then create this conversation in a circle of friends, right? Because I think a lot of these things, we might say it's workplace based, but it all starts with us here talking like this, I don't know if you can speak to that, man. Do you speak to your guys, or do you ever get guys come to you to say, hey, I have this issue at work, but there are resources that I can either use or not use? Do you talk about those things in conversation?
Not as much as I think I should or we should. But I like that as a nation, as South Africa, we're very good at laughing at ourselves around serious issues. So there was a bunch of memes going around that I saw on Twitter a few days ago. It's these guys in bed. Okay, it's not these. It's 3 or 4 guys in bed. And not really cuddling, but they're spending time together. And the meme is like, we need to learn how to cuddle as Machita.
Wow.
So Machita means guys. But the way it's framed, it's so funny. The fact that it's framed around humor, it shows that it's not something that happens often. So I think also maybe there's a way to enter the issue, probably use humor, use other sort of just use other methods to address the issue, because if it's so difficult for men just to show up like that, and I suppose that's why we're here also to break that stigma around it. So maybe it's more podcasts, not just watch the popular podcasts, but podcasts around mental health issues. I think there's no weakness in learning around trying to educate yourself around the issue, using other mediums that are probably more entertaining. I think that's a way out, maybe. Because I think when it seems so serious, it's a bit intimidating.
Very true.
You almost show up as weak. Whereas if it's around humor or, we were chatting about AI earlier, like ChatGPT.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you'd advise this, but I'm sure you can ask ChatGPT on how to deal with mental. It can give you at least the basics.
Well, I love that you're bringing up how we can use AI there, because what's happening now is there are authors, right, who've written books, people who've published a bunch of different things, works around mental health, where they've now created prompts, and you can download that prompt into your ChatGPT, and you can then search for whatever based on the work that they've done. So that's also saying that there's a reliable source that information comes from, and then you can then use that, So again, there are a lot of other avenues, for example, that you can use yourself. So I'm really glad that you brought that. And not to eliminate banter, because banter, I think, is one of the easiest ways to get men talking, to get men excited, So like I was saying about that conversation, I really laughed at the guys, but why are you guys finding it so hard to say, yeah, I went to see a therapist, or I used a resource to check on my mental health, Probably to think of our soccer players in South Africa, we don't necessarily speak to mental health and personal issues like that. It's largely, we speak about things on the outside.
Yeah.
What do you think the guys could really look to, or who can they look to in terms of support in the spaces that you find yourself in now?
Yeah, it's important to have a role model. I think for us, most of the time, we always on the spotlight. When and you know your talent, you know where your capabilities, and you know what that brings, to you as an individual, because the stigma, again, going to that is attached to footballers. It's about mismanagement.
Sure.
It's about womanizing, and being flashy, and with those, you find out that even when, as individuals, as footballers, when we come together, we don't talk about the issues, the real issues that affect us. But we talk about alcohol. We talk about where we're going next week. Where we dancing. And last week it's brilliant. And we, in which I think, for me, there could be structures in place. Especially if we want to be, if we want to be professional enough, because professional football helps you as an individual. It helps you as a team. You want to be an all-round footballer, but again, you got to be a dad. You have to be a human being. That people look at you and say, but yeah, we like what he does, as a father. We like what he does as a manager, not just being seen as a player, which is tough for the guys, because some of them, they might come from backgrounds where they don't know how to handle or to manage, or they don't have, they come from broken families where, once they get into that, they see this a lot of money. They see the access of what they have in front of them, and they just start abusing those and end up in the worst way, in the bad way. Because I've seen that a lot in many of very talented football players that would have made the best out of the bad, because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of you were talking about education, that camaraderie, to say, can't we come together? Can't we form something whereby maybe a players' union where we can come together each and every time? Let's hear out the problems that we have. Some of these guys, they're spending so much money unnecessarily and end up in debt. Some of them, they drink themselves to because of the issues. I mean, I saw something the other day. A youngster, it's coming from a broken family, come in and he get this money, and then he just spend it like that, and he goes to the senior players to say, to seek for help in terms of, can I have 50 rands for petrol, man? I need this happened. So you create excuses, and it sticks with you.
Sure.
And you don't know what you're starting. Because by the time it goes on, you're in it now, in the middle of this crisis, you don't know how to solve yourself. It's really, really tough. But I believe that there should be structures in place, as an organization, to have the players fall into, if they've got all those kind of crises or problems, or have programs as football, as teams, to go out in the communities and do stuff that will make those players realize, the importance of who they are.
Man. And I mean, guys, always remember, we look at soccer players who look very good, right? But the feeling, sometimes we never really learn. We never really find out. And that's what Brother Lucas, I think, is alluding to, is never just look at someone and assume that they've got things together, because we never really know. And I think, Leon, another question that I have now surrounding that is, if you don't have these policies set up in our companies, then what is the cost of that to companies, to business?
As in financial, or the
That's on staff turnover?
Of course. You're going to... I mean, the list is very long, but you're going to have problems around staff turnover, which creates undue costs for organizations, because if people are not mentally healthy, chances they're going to leave. You're going to have an unproductive workforce. You're going to have elevated levels of absenteeism. In South Africa, absenteeism costs our local economy up to 16 billion rand a year. Absenteeism. Some estimates saying up to 19 billion rand a year. Just absenteeism related to stress and burnout. So, the cost is high. You're going to have presenteeism, which is, you have people that are present, but they're absent in the mind. So they're sitting.
Is that like a form of quiet quitting in a way?
What's it?
Is it a form of quiet quitting?
No, it's not this. It's not that. So, and it's interesting that you ask me that, because whenever I talk about presenteeism, people always ask me, is it the same as quiet quitting? It's not. Quiet quitting is I would almost say, a malicious or a conscious effort you make to do the minimum because you don't want to do, or you have a grudge against your employer or something like that. So you consciously quit in your mind and you say, I'm just going to slip by the skin of my teeth.
Okay.
Whereas presenteeism is when your mental health, or for whatever reason, is bad and you're really suffering, but you're not absent, but you're sitting behind your desk, you can't focus, you can't work, and you're not being as productive as you can be. So the two are very different. But it's a very important question, because I think people often think it's the same thing, but it's definitely not the same. But I mean, the cost is huge. I'll just finish with this just to say, when we don't think about mental health in the workplace, what does it mean? It means that annually 12 billion working days are lost across the globe because of unmanaged mental health conditions. Cost $1 trillion. $1 trillion it costs the global economy because people don't take mental health in the workplace seriously. So there's a massive financial cost, but there's also the cost in terms of human potential. People not being able to fulfill their dreams and not being able to work as productively as they can, because their mental health is not being looked at within the workplace.
Man, those are big numbers.
It's staggering. It's absolutely, yeah.
I mean, and I love that you bring that presenteeism in there. We have a lot of us, as you see us now, dressed in polo, looking very good, right? Shout out to Polo for the sponsorship. We look good, but we don't feel as good on the inside, right? And that's what we're trying to do here, is to bridge that gap, to make us look as good as we feel as well. And I think, David, when I look at your workspace, man, there's beautiful stuff that you do. Again, looks very good on the outside, but I know that creative space and doing creative work is a lot of yourself is attached to that. It's a lot of soul work, so to speak, So how do you then work with that? As Brother Lucas said, we attach ourselves to our work so much as men, as our purpose is very attached to that as well. But when do I then have a moment to say that, you know what, man, I put my best foot forward, but let me extend some compassion here, or hey, you know what, I tried. And that's enough. When do I get to a place to say that I've done enough, I've tried enough now, and this is my best effort, right? Despite what monies might not come with that. Yeah.
So I think the strength in my work is, I think what sets me apart from my peers is that I'm a social commentator through art and design. So I don't just draw pretty pictures and post them. There's always a story about that. So I observe what's happening in society, and then I sort of repackage that as an entertainment piece, like a Zapiro of sorts, or any other artist who sort of does cartoons in that sense. And one of the most popular. It's actually, I don't know if it's good or bad, but when a famous figure passes on, I always do a piece on of that person, and there are times where I get so busy I don't do those pieces,
Sure.
and then my audience is like my follower will ask, this person passed on, why aren't you doing something?
Man.
And I literally have to say, but I can't keep on doing RIPs every week. It's taking a toll.
Sure.
By the same token, I do work that celebrates people's victories, like what they're doing, the good in our country and the bad. So it does take its toll, because I don't want to show up as always morbid, like negative.
Sure.
So yeah, I think with my work is very personal. I'm an artist. It's not just the commercial side of a design work where you don't attach personal feelings. But I think the artist in me almost wants to slow down on sharing the negative sides of like what's happening. So it does take its toll. But I think I am dealing with it. I think also I have the agency to choose what to. I don't always have to post something. I think I've learned that. So when I don't feel good about something, I just let it go. It's good to sort of exercise that restriction in terms of always sharing negative.
Yes, sir. Man, that's a big one, man. Bra Lucas, man, when are you're a different animal here, because people are looking at Bra Lucas. You've got young boys in Leeds who wanna be Bra Lucas right now. You've got a kid who wants to be Bra Lucas right now, and there are 500 others who are gunning for that centre back position. You know, others want to live like you. Maybe not necessarily want to play the game like you. Others maybe want to have a family like you, you know? Big family, right? So, hey, it's a bit intense on that one there. So how do you then speak to someone who's looking at you and saying that I want to be that man?
Yeah, it's a tough one now, because, you know, especially now with the recent stats saying, you know, there's about how many Lucases there in Leeds? And I always put it straight, they're not mine. They're not mine. At least they're named after me, but they're not mine. So you know, I think we're all different. I think we all mirror ourselves to the best. We know I mean, I talk to a lot of kids, and I'll ask them, who's your favorite player? Like Messi, you know? I said, Messi or Cristiano, but why not Kuzwayo? Why not John Kuzwayo? Do you know? Because you got to start somewhere.
Sure.
You know, you're going to start somewhere and grow, you know, as an individual. But obviously, I think we expect these youngsters, you know, to grow and be responsible, and it's hard for them because they are forced to grow very quick, you know, with how life has evolved. You know, football has evolved quickly, you know, and again, what they're looking at, because I always say, but why do you want to play football? Because some of them will say, but I want to have money. Some of them want to have a nice car. You know, some of them want to live a good life. You know, things that you just said, KG, say that, you know, it looks good, but the work to get to that level, it's never easy. You know, it's very tough. It's challenging, and this is an industry that can break you, and it could be really bad. You know, because lots of people think they see you working every day, how much money is coming in every week, but when that money goes, and the worst is that Leon David has a career that even at 80 they can still be working. I won't be working at 80 or at a certain point. You're gonna have to give it up and embark into something else. But the expectations and the lifestyle, and the lifestyle for you to be from driving a BMW to go to a Peugeot or to a Toyota Corolla, it's tough. You know, and at the same time, the more you finish, the time you finished, the more responsibility, because then what you've accumulated throughout in terms of you had kids, you've got a house now that you're responsible to pay every month. But when that money goes down, to bring yourself as well down to that level, it's very tough. And I see that's one of the things that most of the players are grappling against. You know, to do what are the people gonna say? You know, when I drive this kind of car, why are the people say when I don't wear the Gucci anymore? You know, it's a huge problem that sometimes you're gonna have to set your mindset. It's all about your mindset, you know. It's all about thinking forward and thinking, what do I do after retirement? You know, set yourself a target. Or try and, you know, get something that obviously you won't live the same lifestyle, but something that you live on, and you'll be able to manage your life. You know, so sometimes that's how bad it is, and that's how most of the players now, you see that they start drinking, and it becomes an excuse. Start drinking, start smoking, you know, and it's hard to see somebody that has been at the highest level and being, you know, has influenced, because to be honest, for us to play the game, it's not just for us. You know, it's changing the mindset, you know, of people around people, because and that's what we need to do. We all want something. We all want the same thing, but in a different way. You know, we want to seem to be positive. We want to have positive vibes towards our communities where we come from. We want to be a good example, you know, and we want to be an all-round dad, a brother, you know, to be able to manage and be able to be a great example to all of them, which can be tough.
Man. Yo, Pralu, you're closing us down with something deep, man. Yeah? I'm sure the uncles there are now sitting with, I'm going to sit with their sons after hearing this one. Right, man, Chana, man. I think we've been too hard on you, man. You know, we can ease off a little bit, huh? But gentlemen, I really appreciate this. We can go on for a little bit more. I know the last one was a little bit longer. But I just want a one-word close up. I think we can start with you, Leon. How is today? How are you feeling? Do you want to leave us with just one word to say peace to the guys out there listening?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's been great connecting with Lucas and yourself again. It was great meeting David. I think my message is just, you know, for men out there and for society to say, work together to break the stigma around men and mental health. And for men to become more comfortable showing vulnerability. Because as men, we're fine to be angry, but we're not fine to cry.
Okay.
And we don't have a healthy balance of emotion. So I guess my call to action is for men to not be afraid to show vulnerability, and for society to accept men as human beings who also have vulnerability.
David?
Yeah, similar sentiments to Leon, I think. With my work, I express myself. So I'd also encourage other men to express themselves in whatever sphere of career they're in. Express themselves, express their feelings, be more open. And like I said earlier, find alternative means also to sort of be open if the traditional means aren't so easy.
Sir.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not about yourself. It's about everyone around you. You know, your influence says a lot, you know, and it means a lot. And I think we all as men trying to be positive, we're trying to be a good role model. So let's be vulnerable. I think that's one word I've had today. You know, let's open up. Let's talk. I mean, this is, you said earlier on, this is how it starts. You know, why can't it grow?
That's right.
You know, I think, Polo, great to have sessions like this. I mean, it's amazing. It doesn't have to be as organized as it is. You know, it could be as Kokasi.
Sure.
Leon Riplomeda. You know, instead of talking about women, let's talk something positive. And I think that's how we can get through this, because it's tough out there.
Man. Gents, I appreciate this conversation, man. Leon, thank you. Bro Lucas, David, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we have you again next time. Man, I just want to give a fat shout out to Polo and to John Craig. Again, 75 years, man. I mean, look at these fine gentlemen. Leon, we're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation about this one. But
I'm representing.
just remember to take care of yourselves, gents. Take care of your mental health, because without you, there is no work that can happen. So we can attach ourselves to our work as much as we want to, but please be sure to, or be careful not to swallow yourself or get swallowed up in your work, and make sure that you prioritize you, right? Because the family cannot be there if you are not there. The family can obviously live on, they can survive and do whatever they can, but they'll always live in memory of, man, if dad was there, if uncle was there, if brother was there. So to all my brothers out there, keep doing your thing. Like I said, Polo South Africa, mine matters too. We out of here.